I'm going to talk to you today about bringing the soul home, about those design elements that enable our outer spaces, our homes, to support and nourish our inner state. And at the same time, do it with the awareness that when we focus on inner consciousness, we can create an outer space that will then support and nourish us. So this becomes this beautiful cyclical relationship that happens with the outer and the inner worlds, with the bringing the transcendent of spirit into the immanent of home, so that our lives become full, enriched, beautiful, and harmonious. And that's the point. So focus really and be aware of how important it is that the outer journey and the inner journey are a continuum of a journey that supports one supports the other. Understanding that this knowing of the energetics of space has been an ancient knowing that people have used and worked with throughout the centuries in their sacred spaces, and now we're going to take those principles and see how we can use them in our inner space at home. One of the things that we have to be aware of is the principle of sacred geometry. Sacred geometry was found in ancient Egypt. Of course, we have the building of the pyramids as the primary example, but ancient India, ancient Greece, you see it in the buildings of the amphitheaters, places where people had sacred ceremony, the temples in India, ancient Rome, the Celts, the Inca, the Aztecs, medieval architects. They all used principles of sacred geometry to create the spaces that harness the energetics of the cosmos through the way that they define light, that through the way that we have views of the stars and the planets, through golden ratio, the basic patterns of that form the matrix existence of the universe and mirror the origins of all things. So we're talking here about a reflection, a mirroring of the external or the outer with the inner state. Eastern design has been as well wonderful with this. We have feng shui, the understanding that you harmonize and mitigate space with working with the elements of earth, water, fire, air, and spirit, the 5 elements, balancing them, harmonizing them, and Vastu Shastra, which is the Indian system of design, where the building is built on specific principles, very deliberately, so that the people living and working in those buildings are in harmony and work in harmony. So just to affirm for you or reinforce for you, the people who live and who work in buildings designed according to Vastu architecture find that they think more clearly and creatively, that they make better decisions, that they feel happier and they feel healthier, and therefore more alert, more refreshed, more creative. They find that they sleep more restfully in buildings, in rooms that are designed according to feng shui or Vastu principles, and therefore they feel more refreshed, they have more energy, they're less fatigued, and they experience less stress and greater peace of mind. So these are the wonderful elements that happen when you consciously bring in the principles of harmony, the elements of harmony into a space. As an antithesis to that, houses and offices that are not built according to those principles actually can create problems. So, we have problems based on many aspects in our lives, but how many of us think about problems like anxiety, depression, illness, chronic disease, blocks to creativity, financial loss, bad luck, obstacles to our progress and success, disharmony in our relationships, and antisocial behavior, even criminal tendencies, when we are in an environment that riles us up or that doesn't give us the space and the wonderful harmony and energy that we need in order to work beautifully, flow creatively, and feel relaxed. And that said, I also want to focus very briefly on the psychological effects of color, because color has a very, very specific effect on our psyche. And also it works energetically. Every color has its own energy. So I'm going to go very briefly and start with warm colors: reds, oranges, yellows, pinks, golds, or combination of them. What warm colors do is they rev us up, they get us going. They convey emotions from simple optimism to even extreme violence. Certainly, they increase appetites and passion. Also, when you're designing with a space, you want to have pops of color, of warm colors. Otherwise, too much tends to create too much excitement, not enough relaxation. Moving on to cool colors: blues, greens, purple, silver, or combinations of those. Cool colors have a very calming effect. At one end of the spectrum, they can be comforting, nurturing, and healing. That's when they have maybe greens with a little bit of yellow in them. At the other end of the color of the spectrum, if they can be too cold, they can look impersonal and antiseptic. Cool colors appear smaller than warm colors if they're used in equal amounts. And then we have the neutrals: the blacks, the whites, the grays. They can convey seriousness, they can convey conventionality, or they can convey mystery, sexiness, sophistication. Blacks, whites, and grays also make other colors appear brighter. And then our earth tones, the browns, the beiges, and the tans, they represent wholesomeness, earthiness, steadfastness, simplicity, and friendliness. Okay? And I want you to be aware also that certain rooms will have certain purposes, and the colors should support those purposes. So, for example, the colors of kitchens and dining rooms are all about nourishment. So use colors that feel nourishing, that maybe increase the appetite. Living rooms, dining rooms too, are about relationship if the whole family is getting together. Colors that make you feel communal, that really make you feel like you want to be together. These are the beiges, the browns, the tans, pops of other colors as well. Studies and libraries about creativity, contemplation, communication. These are colors that start working with the mind, and the mind colors that work with the mind. Blues are really good for those rooms. Bedrooms, where we're talking about rest and rejuvenation. We also want to do quieter colors that enable deep sleep. Blues, creams, colors that hold the body as it's sleeping. Even greens, if they're not too intense. Very healing energy, which allows us to release as we're sleeping. Bathrooms are very, very important for cleansing and purification, and great colors for cleansing and purification, for releasing and letting go, are the greens and the blues. And grays work in these, gray particularly with those tones, blue tones work well in these spaces. And then of course, meditation spaces where we're working with essence. This is where we want to encourage the colors of the higher chakras. So the purples of the violets of the sixth chakra, and then, the beautiful golds of the highest chakra. Now, getting to other foundational elements of design that are imperative if we want to create a harmonious space, we have to think about foundations. We have to think about how foundations provide grounded strength. When our foundations are secure, they're great sources of inspiration, and they give us a good grounding. They support the first chakra and give us a grounding so that in our space we feel centered and we feel grounded. The other thing that helps to feel centered is the boundaries we have in our space, because they focus the attention on an archetypal level on the center of our being. Boundaries are created by good, strong doorways, entranceways, molding, defined colors in spaces, and having good negative space between the objects helps to define the boundaries. On a spiritual level, if we have great boundaries, we get a sense of connection to our inner depths, as I said, to the center of our being. When we don't have boundaries, this can lead to a certain borderline angst. And if our boundaries are too rigid, they become a painful defense against life. So be aware that boundaries are important to help us center, but they should not be rigid. Okay, the next thing we need to be aware of is traffic flow, the wu way, the going with the flow, the ability to move smoothly and easily through a space that's not blocked by things in the way. Because when we have blocked energy, we become stagnant, we become bored, we get a tsunami of emotions that are created by clutter and chaos, and we don't have the beautiful capacity to think freely, to communicate openly. So if we have free-flowing passageways and pathways, even in our gardens, but certainly, leading up to our front doors and the passageways and the corridors in the home and in our workspaces, that creates a sense of harmony and ease. The next design element I'm going to focus on that's really important is focal points in a space. What draws your eye? If you see me sitting here, the focal point in the space is invariably going to be the painting behind me. It draws your eye. Imperfection is another thing. Sometimes we like to have symmetry in a space, and symmetry is really important because it helps us to feel very balanced. It helps us to feel very harmonious. Perfection on that level is beautiful, but it can become boring. And the truth is, nothing is perfect. That's the beauty of life. It is in the edges of the forest that new life is born. What imperfection does is to enable a subtle charm, to give soul and depth and nuance to our space. Now, the important thing is if there's too much chaos and too much imperfection, we become, we find ourselves at the mercy of the subconscious shadow. And that is the antithesis of harmony. So the little bits of imperfection that create charm. You can see that there's balance on either side in my background, but it's balanced because there are elements on both sides, but they shouldn't be exactly the same. Another design element that I really want to focus or have you focus on is light. Of course, light creates mood. Mood creates atmosphere. Atmosphere psychologically helps us to feel, again, relaxed, harmonious, or intrigued. When there's a lack of light, and we know this for people who have a lack of light in the winter and they get a seasonal affective disorder, it can manifest as depression and anger. So notice the light in your environment. Pooled light creates beautiful mood atmosphere. Any light is a reflection and a mirroring of the divine light. I'm going to talk very briefly now about the void. The void is that which is beyond manifestation, that which is the transcendent principle. Now, how do we bring that idea of void into our environment? What does void do? Well, of course, space, okay? It is reflected architecturally very often in sacred buildings in the center of the top of a domed curve, courtyards in the center of a space. It enables a sense of inner calm. It brings us back to our simplicity. And it reflects the profound still point at the very, very center of our being. So I hope that this will be a helpful little 15-minute pointer for how you can create a space that is more harmonious, that is supportive, both for you on a psycho-emotional level, nourishing for you on a soul level, bringing soul home. Thank you.